I'm genuinely surprised with what Apple has done this time around with their phones. And that is definitely a rare occasion considering that they tend to be pretty underwhelming. This year in general has actually been a rather interesting year for smartphones in general, with Samsung releasing the Note 10 Plus, which was probably one of my favorite devices of this year period, or at least in terms of smartphones. I actually swore that nothing probably was going to beat it this year, considering that everything else was so bland to me. The Note 10 definitely set the bar pretty high, I would say. This iPhone, the iPhone 11 Pro, was definitely one that surprised me in many ways, and I'm surprised that I feel the way that I do about it, quite frankly, but I'm definitely looking forward to exploring why it is that I'm saying that. Because even after myself watching so many reviews, I never really felt very excited about it until I actually got my hands on the iPhone 11 Pro. With that said, join me on this roller coaster of emotions, and together, let's decide if this is a great phone or not. The exterior design of the iPhone 11 Pro consists of probably the best materials you will ever find on any smartphone released so far, and I really mean that. Here you've got stainless steel around the trimmings of the iPhone 11, and then around the back you're going to find a matte glass texture that feels fantastic in hand. Before, we used to have glossy textures or glossy glass textures that got a ton of fingerprints on them and were very slippery, but this time around that has been changed. And for the first time in a long time, I'm actually comfortable using a phone without a case at all, considering that this one actually has such good grip on it. I have to say that that is very impressive, and the fact that it still feels so good and premium is always a plus. Obviously, the front is still a glossy glass texture, but generally speaking, this design is very sleek. Even though it is not perfect, I still have my gripes about the notch and the way that the cameras look around the back in particular. However, I have to say that Apple did do an amazing job with this midnight green in particular. This looks very good. So in general, I'm very happy with the exterior design of the iPhone 11 Pro. On the right, you're just going to find the sleep wake button and a SIM card tray, while on the left, you're going to find a volume rocker, and this time the buttons are going to be separated rather than being technically just one rocker that goes up and down. These are two separate buttons for volume up and volume down. You also have an alert slider on the left. Then at the very bottom, you're going to find the set of stereo speakers, the lightning connector for charging and transferring data, as well as your audio purposes, and of course, the memory of a lost headphone jack. One that will never be laid to rest. But that is what the iPhone's overall design, at least in terms of buttons and ports, consists of. This iPhone consists of a 5.8-inch 2436 by 1125 OLED display that looks, simply put, amazing. This device's screen is definitely one of the best ones out there, I have to say. Even though I have to say that the Note 10s and the Note 10s Pluses do look significantly nicer to me, just because those do get brighter and the color science on those is just so good. On here, the colors are still fairly vibrant, which is nice, and the display is definitely sharp enough to capture anything that you would want it to. So with that said, this is definitely a great display, no questions about that. However, this is still a 60Hz display, which is disappointing considering that Apple jumped the bar so high with implementing higher refresh rates on their iPad Pros, which by the way does look really cool in person. Granted, a lot of smartphones haven't implemented the high refresh rate. The ones that have been pretty niche, so I suppose I won't necessarily attack Apple completely for not having that. But either way, you do still get a very good display with this iPhone, absolutely. The speakers are also very good on this device. So the speakers are located at the bottom, unlike in how it is in other devices. Other Samsung devices actually utilize the earpiece for the speaker. The Note 10 utilizes the back of the phone for some of the speakers, and then at the bottom they usually have another set. Pixel usually goes for front-firing speakers, which is actually my preferred method. However, these speakers are surprisingly great, noticeably better than the Note 10s as a matter of fact, and I was very satisfied with the Note 10s. These speakers get incredibly loud, they sound very clear. It's just very impressive what Apple has been able to accomplish with these. It sounds great for gaming, content consumption, listening to music, all that sort of stuff, and it gets loud enough that it allows you to overcome some of the room noise that you might encounter. And not just a little bit of room noise, but it's moderate actually. It does a pretty good job at that. But with that said, you should take a listen.
You can stick in your pocket. I don't know about you, but that sounds really awesome to me. Because Skyrim is a massive game that can now literally fit in your pockets. Even though it is an older game, it's still pretty huge. and a lot of people definitely still enjoy it, myself included. However, there is no HD rumble. So, yeah.
Now, other features that make the iPhone 11 Pro so special is the improvement to its water resistance rating. So it used to be IP67, and then Apple went ahead and bumped that up to IP68. So now, in terms of being able to be submerged or being attacked by mud or rain or anything of the sort, this phone is now considerably more resistant than it was before to that sort of thing. So having greater resistance, nicer build quality, and still sustaining this very sleek design, I have to say that is definitely very impressive, and it is worth noting as a special feature. It's very nice that Apple has made this more resistant to the things that could kill it most easily. Also, Face ID is still one of the best facial unlocking recognition apps in the market, and I have to say that this time around it does feel faster than it did before. Now, it feels just about instant, when before it did take a bit of a minute. I've never had that much of great luck with Face ID in the past, but the iPhone 11 does change my thoughts on it a bit, because it makes it significantly faster from what I've noticed at the very least. So now, in terms of specs, you've actually got quite the monster here. This iPhone features an A13 Bionic CPU from Apple, which is a 6-core CPU again this time around, but that is still a good core count in general in my opinion. An in-house Apple GPU, 4GB of RAM, a 3046 mAh battery, a 5.8 2436 by 1125 resolution display, a set of triple cameras around the back, a single camera around the front, and a set of stereo speakers around the bottom. Quite the package that you're getting here, even if it might not feel totally complete to some people, which is totally understandable. But now, let's dig a little bit deeper into overall performance here. So in terms of gaming performance, it is not surprising at all that the iPhone 11 Pro performs very well in that category. Games just aren't really all that hard to run nowadays, quite frankly, as, well, most mobile devices can run that sort of thing. A flagship that is a couple of years old, it should still be able to crush any mobile game that you throw at it. So I don't believe that to be a problem, and the iPhone 11 obviously crushes things in that department. Now, something like the OnePlus 7 Pro, since it does have a higher refresh rate display, might be nicer for gaming. Same thing with the Razer phone. However, iPhone 11 Pro has, for example, very amazing speakers, which is something that the OnePlus 7 Pro still doesn't necessarily have. I suppose that might be subjective. It depends on what you value most for gaming on your smartphone. They both offer really great things, and the iPhone 11 Pro is still a great contender in that category. However, in terms of camera quality, I have to give this one to Apple. This is the very clear champion here. This is by far the best camera on a smartphone from 2019. That goes for both the front and the back cameras. I was disappointed with the Note 10's front-facing camera when that first came out and I tested it, just because it didn't really seem all that sharp. It seemed like it was lacking quite a few things, and the color science wasn't necessarily right for me. Also, portrait mode wasn't really all that effective in my opinion. So I didn't love the front-facing camera on the Note 10. The front-facing camera on the iPhone 11 Pro is fantastic. The color science is right, the sharpness is correct, and even using portrait mode is a very enjoyable experience because it doesn't over-sharpen the edges around you when it's trying to blur the background behind you. But actually, what it actually does a very subtle job at getting that effect. Like, you might not notice it right off the bat when you see it, but you'll just notice that there is much greater depth of field between you, the subject, and the background behind you. The iPhone 11 Pro does and takes the best portrait mode photos thus far, even better than the Pixel 3s if you ask me. Though that is just at the moment. I definitely look forward to seeing how it will stack up with the Pixel 4 when that comes out. That will be available on the channel as well, so look forward to that. But in general, for the front-facing camera, this is a 12 megapixel sensor that supports resolution at 4K up to 60 frames per second, which is definitely very impressive. A front-facing camera that can now do 4K. The Note 10 Plus was able to do that, of course, but it is nice having that in a smaller package, and it does look amazing, and this front-facing camera just looks a lot better than the Note 10s. In my opinion, there's no competition there. And just in terms of the portrait mode, it does a much better job at handling that versus something like the 10R, which also disappointed me in terms of the front-facing camera. So I'm very satisfied with what Apple has given us this time around. Even if you like to use this for vlogging, this is going to be a very effective solution for that as well. And now onto my favorite set of cameras, and that has got to be the triple camera system on the iPhone 11 Pro. And I have to say, there is a lot going for this set. It might look a little bit ridiculous at first, or it might look a little bit classical to you. It just depends on the kind of person that you are. The sheer quality that these cameras offer. And here's what I mean. Each one of these is a 12 megapixel sensor. They all support the same resolution of 4K at up to 60 frames per second. However, here you have a normal wide-angle lens, which is mimicking the likes of a 26mm lens with an f-stop of 1.8, and the telephoto lens, which is mimicking the likes of a 52mm lens that is best for zooming in or just getting very close to an object through the lens with an f-stop of 2. And then you've got the ultra wide angle lens, which does a great job of capturing a lot around you, and it mimics the likes of a 13mm lens with an f-stop of 2.4. Those are a lot of camera lenses stacked into just one device, the back of a very tiny iPhone 11 Pro. So here are my thoughts on that. The colors are very accurate. Portrait mode is still very good. The effect is very subtle, yet so effective. It is, so far, the best implementation I have seen of portrait modes coming from both the back and the front of this device. The telephoto lens allows you to get very, very, very close. And surprisingly, it almost seems like you're not losing any kind of sharpness when you're getting that close in, when you're punching in with the telephoto lens, which is impressive. The Galaxy Note 10 did a good job at handling that, but there was definitely still noticeable grain, or at least a loss of sharpness when you use the telephoto lens to dig in so closely. However, with this camera, you don't lose almost any quality, at least none that I can notice on my own, which is very, very impressive. It's probably a new one coming from telephoto lenses on any smartphone this time around. Ultra-wide does an amazing job of capturing things around you, and it doesn't give you any sort of weird fisheye effect. It's actually great. I really enjoy the different camera options on the iPhone 11 Pro, and I think that every smartphone should try to implement these because these are easily at the top of the food chain right now. And next up, it is going to be the battery life. Here, you've also got a winner still. So Apple has made very great improvements since the iPhone XS in order to improve battery life, and a lot of it has to do with software optimizations. It's clearly not the increase in any kind of batteries because the physical battery is still very small in comparison to other devices. This device right here can easily be a 1.5 day long phone. Not necessarily in screen on time, you can't use this for a day and a half straight. Most smartphones are usually dying, or at least close to dying by the end of the day, or at least just with enough energy to last up until the very early stages of the following day. But that said, this device can actually last you a little bit longer than that, so in terms of battery life, you've got a true champion. This one has been incredibly resilient, and it withstands so many of my tests. I can watch videos for longer than I can on other devices, and you've easily got about 4 hours more than you would get from something like the iPhone XS. Now, it should be noted that this isn't as good as it can get, because the iPhone 11 Pro Max actually will give you even more battery life than that, which is crazy. Apple has done an amazing job in terms of battery consumption this time around as well. I'm very impressed with this device. However, this is a section where you might go from thinking that I'm an Apple fanboy to somebody that absolutely hates Apple altogether, because I do have quite a few things that bother me about this device still. Someone that is coming from Android, like myself, will still have a very difficult time transitioning from Android to iOS because Apple has not made iOS any easier or user-friendly to use than before. In my opinion, of course. I do not appreciate having to use these gestures. These gestures can be a little bit confusing just because of how they're organized. Having to swipe down from one corner to do one thing, having to swipe down from another one to do another thing. I don't like that everything appears to be hidden, but also in front of my face at the same time. What I mean is that icons, for example, I still can't customize the placement, and having folders is very clunky to me. It doesn't help make things any cleaner, in my opinion, on the home screen because I still have a lot of clutter on the screen that I don't necessarily want, and it's just not a very good experience. So I still don't love the idea of using iOS, quite frankly. So that is still a downside. It's upsetting to see that Apple went this far as to making iOS more user-friendly by adding gestures, but it really does depend on the person. I don't love the idea of having to use gestures. It's not that I'm not used to using gestures. I just found that the gestures on the Note 10 Plus, for example, to be much more user-friendly than the ones on the iPhone 11 Pro. That's just my take on that. And there are also some design quirks with this particular device. The notch is still feeling like a very unnecessary evil. So many devices have figured out ways of hiding the notch or eliminating the notch altogether, just making it as minimalistic as possible. The Note 10 Plus comes to mind, the Galaxy S10, and devices like that. Other devices that have actually tried to hide the cameras behind the device or just in it, actually, that you could just pop them up and use them to take a photo or something like that when you need them, without obtruding anywhere in the screen. Never felt modern when it came out, and now it feels even more outdated than ever. It does not look good on the front of this device, and aesthetically it is not very pleasing at all. Still, the way that the cameras were organized, it has grown to me now. I don't hate it quite as much as I did when I first saw it, or it doesn't look that obtrusive in person as it does in videos for some reason. But still, the way that this was organized is still a little bit strange. They could have just given it a straight set and just allowed more space for the back of the phone to shine a little bit more, just in terms of its aesthetic design. Now, again, this is something that grew on me. I don't hate it so much anymore, and I actually kind of like it. Maybe it's just because of the color. This is the only color I've actually seen in person since I've been able to access this device. Another issue here is going to be that Touch ID has been missing for a long time. They took that out around 2017 when Apple decided that it was primitive technology, even though it was still in the midst of getting improved and it was the best kind of fingerprint scanner that anyone could use. Rather than adding it on the back, they just removed it all entirely. There was this rumor, this sort of excitement from people that made everybody feel that they may have plans to implement it under the screen this entire time. However, 2 years have passed since then. We're at the iPhone 11 Pro and we still don't have that. There are no signs of an embedded fingerprint scanner here or even coming in the near future, it seems, which is very disappointing because even though Face ID is very good as it is, I actually don't like using Face ID all that much because I still have to look at the phone, let it unlock, and then I have to swipe up. So it's still slower than just using a fingerprint scanner, and I don't particularly love that. So yeah, 2 generations have passed, and the fact that there is no fingerprint scanner at all in any shape or form is ridiculous to me. So yeah, not everything is rainbow and sunshine when it comes to the iPhone 11 Pro, but a lot of it is, if I'm honest. I really don't think that the things that I said should let you distract you from the fact that this is still an amazing phone. But there are still some things to consider because those things might be deal breakers for you. The Note 10 Plus is probably still my favorite smartphone of the year so far. We'll have to see when the Pixel 4 finally comes out, which should be sometime in October finally. But the iPhone, just in terms of its battery and also just in terms of its camera quality, completely destroys the Note 10 Plus, and that is pretty crazy to me. The Note 10 Plus had room to be a lot better than it was, even though I still thought it was amazing. But the iPhone 11 Pro dethrones it in a couple of ways that are actually very meaningful to some people. So I will say this is an amazing device with its quirks. If those quirks are enough to bother you, then this is not the smartphone for you. If you might find those quirks charming, or if you are just an iOS user and need to upgrade, this is the iPhone to upgrade to, because this might not be a significant upgrade from the XS to you, but it could be a significant upgrade even from just the 10 to an extent, the XR even. So do keep that into consideration. If you're an iOS kind of person, this is the phone you want to go for, hands down. I will strongly recommend it to that kind of user. However, in the future, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing how this one would stack up against something like the Google Pixel 4 when that's released. We are going to bring that into the channel for review, and we can also run a comparison video just to see how that's going to go. So if you're excited for that, make sure to subscribe, like, and well, stay tuned. And if you are interested in buying the iPhone 11 Pro or any of the iPhone available within the iPhone 11 lineup, then I will be making sure to leave affiliate links to Amazon in the description so that you can go and check those out. If you do use our links to make a purchase, and we do get a small commission, that does help us run things just a little bit more smoothly around here. So if you were to use those links, we would very much appreciate it. Also, we have just launched a Patreon very recently. That said, you can go ahead and join our Discord server for as little as $5 a month from the Patreon page. So if that is something that interests you, please go ahead and check that out. I will be leaving that linked in the description. So that is all for me for today. This has been Francisco from Tech Summit. Thank you for watching, and I'll be seeing you all later. Enjoy.